Have you ever considered why certain individuals effortlessly attract success, opportunities, and abundance, as if the universe conspires in their favor, while others, despite relentless effort, rarely make progress? It feels unfair, doesn't it? But what if I told you the difference isn't about luck, talent, or inheritance, but rather something imperceptible, quiet, yet extraordinarily powerful? What if I asserted that there's a genuine, proven method capable of turning any aspiration into reality, regardless of your current circumstances? Sounds unlikely? Well, that's precisely what I thought when I first heard such an idea, until the moment I personally experienced its truth. For a long time, I believed that existence was merely a series of random events, an aimless journey where some were born lucky, and others simply had to settle for getting by. I watched individuals thrive and wondered, what do they have that I lack? I worked incredibly hard, followed all the right advice, but success always seemed meant for someone else. It was at that point that I realized the turning point wasn't in my actions, but in my beliefs. It wasn't a sudden revelation, but rather the consequence of a deep unease, an unbearable feeling of living below what, deep down, I knew I could achieve. And perhaps you've experienced this too, that quiet questioning that whispers there's more to life than just paying bills and longing for the weekend. I vividly recall the first time I encountered the phrase, "think and grow rich." It struck me as almost simplistic. I was exhausted, in debt, directionless, and someone was suggesting that all I needed to do was change my mindset. It sounded absurd. Yet, something within me urged me to listen. I began to research, to observe successful individuals, and I identified a common thread. None of them spoke of chance or circumstances, they all talked about decision. They had, at some point, decided they would be successful, even before they had any evidence. And it was then that I understood my own deficiency. I had never made a firm decision. I only wished. I professed a desire for a better life, but deep down, I continued to embrace the same limitations, the same fears, the same excuses. I existed in preservation mode, reacting to adversities instead of creating solutions. That was the crucial turning point. Once I realized that what separates aspiration from achievement is a clear choice, my entire outlook shifted. However, don't imagine this transformation was instant or supernatural. It began deep within me, through modest daily actions, by deliberately choosing not to be governed by the outdated beliefs that imprisoned me. I started to question what I had always accepted as undeniable truth. Why did I believe one had to suffer to achieve success? Why did I assume financial resources were for others and not for me? These questions destabilized me. And simultaneously, they granted me autonomy. Have you ever felt that way, as if you're trapped in a cycle that doesn't reflect your true essence? Perhaps you wake up daily with the feeling that you're just getting by, striving to avoid giving up. But what if I told you that precisely at that point, where everything seems unchangeable, lies hidden the opportunity to completely transform your situation? That was my experience. I was at the peak of adversity, without prospects, and yet, deep inside, there was a spark that proclaimed, "You are capable of more." I didn't know the way, but I decided I would find it. That resolve, however minuscule it seemed at the time, marked the dawn of the entire process. And this is precisely what many don't understand. True transformation doesn't begin with having money, time, or opportunities. It starts when you choose to no longer tolerate a limited existence. When that determination blossoms within you, something shifts in your frequency, your attitude, your actions. People notice, favorable opportunities begin to emerge, ideas flourish, and you start attracting precisely what once seemed unattainable. Not because the environment changes, but because you change the way you interact with it. I realized that the universe doesn't respond to those who complain or those who wait. It responds to those who decide. And deciding is distinct from wishing. Wishing is aspiring to something while simultaneously hesitating. Deciding is eliminating alternatives, it's proceeding as if the outcome is already inevitable. When I made my choice, I stopped contemplating failure. I stopped agonizing over the question, what if it doesn't work out? Because that line of thinking is what keeps you tied to the starting point. I began visualizing the life I craved with an almost tangible clarity. Every day, I spoke aloud the amount of money I wanted to earn, as if it were a concrete reality, not a fantasy. And this practice began to reshape my entire environment. People looked at me as if I had lost my mind. And, in a way, I actually had, but it was a beneficial madness, that of someone who chooses to experience the unattainable. Because when you truly believe in your own capacity, what seemed out of reach begins to fade from your perception. I stopped waiting for the opportune moment and started to build that moment myself. And that is the dividing line between those who turn aspirations into achievements and those who merely spend their lives dreaming. The reality is that we all reach a threshold of discontinuity. A moment when we realize that persisting in the same pattern causes more suffering than change itself. And that was precisely my experience. The decisive turning point wasn't the book I read or the mentor I met, but the resolution to never again settle for anything less than what I knew I deserved. From that point onward, every advance, every setback, every modest achievement all became part of a path I myself had chosen. And perhaps this is your current moment. Maybe you're reading these words and feel something stirring within you, a blend of fear and longing. Don't dismiss that feeling. This is how transformation begins, quietly, uncomfortably, but undeniably. The turning point isn't an external event. It's an internal choice. A decision that redirects the course of your entire life. I made mine, and from that day forward, I never returned to my previous state. For multiple years, I was an expert at procrastinating decisions. There was always a reason to postpone just a little longer, waiting for the right moment, waiting to accumulate more financial resources, waiting for life to get structured. I convinced myself I was being cautious, but in essence, I was a prisoner of apprehension. I presumed that to undertake something significant, I first needed to understand the entire process, every detail, every step. And it was precisely this mindset that kept me immobilized. Because the truth is simple, those who wait to feel prepared never start. The universe doesn't reward those who hesitate, it rewards those who decide. I recall the journey where I noticed that all the individuals I admired shared a common trait: they chose before they understood how. Thomas Edison didn't wait to fully master electricity before beginning his investigations. Henry Ford didn't wait for a favorable economic climate to manufacture his automobiles. They simply decided. And that is the disparity between those who idealize and those who materialize. Decision is the starting point. It's like igniting an inner flame that, once activated, transforms how you think, act, and perceive. I learned that the act of deciding isn't exclusively cognitive, it's emotional. A genuine choice is felt. It emerges from a state of deeply rooted belief, where one no longer seeks safeguards, because it's understood that certainties arise after the decision. When I determined that I would no longer be destitute, that I would never again live restricted, I didn't possess even 1 cent of a US dollar in my pocket. I didn't know where the money would come from, I had no connections, I had no academic qualifications. But I decided. And that resolution began to transform everything, for it altered the frequency of my consciousness. From that moment onward, my actions began to mirror what I believed was achievable. Many individuals confuse wishing with determination. To wish is to utter, it would be good if that happened. To determine is to declare, this will come to pass, and I will do whatever is necessary. The distinction lies in the force. A wish is susceptible, conditioned by contingencies. A determination is unshakable, it withstands fear, failure, and objections. When you decide, something in the universe readjusts. The right people appear, favorable opportunities manifest, ideas begin to flow. And it's not about chance, it's alignment. You emit a frequency of conviction, and the universe responds to it. Brain science explains this precisely. Every time you make a resolution with conviction, your brain establishes new neural pathways. It's as if you're communicating to your cognition, this is the new path, proceed in this direction. And the more you solidify that choice through execution, the stronger that pathway becomes. Research indicates that, in approximately 66 days of continuous application, a new mental pattern begins to solidify. In other words, making a decision is the initial step to becoming a different person. However, it's crucial to act as if you already believe in your own choice. I recall a conversation I had with a friend back then. He asked me, "Robert, how can you be so sure of your success? I immediately replied, because I've already made my choice. He laughed, thinking it was arrogance. But what he didn't grasp was that a genuine decision isn't presumption, it's confidence. Not confidence in others, but in your own core. When you truly decide, there's no room for doubt. You don't wait for signs, you embody the evidence yourself. And this is one of the universe's most powerful principles: what solidifies in thought invariably manifests in the concrete realm. People often ask me, what if I choose and fail? And I retort, what if you never take a stand and spend your whole life wondering what might have been if you had dared? Hesitation is among humanity's greatest sources of distress. It traps people in a kind of slumber, caught between their current state and their potential. The fear of failing is what holds most people back from making significant choices. Yet, failure is merely a temporary outcome, a sign that you're exploring new paths. Indecision, on the other hand, that is a lasting failure. Life doesn't wait for you to understand every step. It responds to your initial move. I've never met a prosperous person who had all the answers from the start. Not one. They began with uncertainties, fears, anxieties, but they began. The key is simple: action creates clarity. With each step forward, the path progressively reveals itself. Do you want to change your career, start a business, or reshape your financial situation? Decide immediately. Because what you don't choose, the universe chooses for you. And when the universe decides, it's typically for the benefit of your comfort zone, not your capability. Resolution is a dividing line. It separates the past from the future, the achievable from the impossible, your past identity from your future potential. I've witnessed individuals completely transform their lives, simply by choosing to change course. And I've seen others dedicate their entire lives to preparing for a moment that never arrives. Because the ideal moment doesn't exist. The only real conjuncture is the present. To decide is to proclaim to the universe, I am ready, even if I don't know how. And the solution appears. It invariably appears. The same thing happened to me. When I left the fire department, I didn't know what would come next. However, I knew that if I stayed, I would be denying an inner calling. The choice was terrifying, but equally liberating. It was the inaugural act of trust that truly transformed my experience. And the core of it is this: you don't need to see the entire staircase to take the first step. You only need to decide that you will ascend. The distinction between the dreamer and the doer lies in a single instant, the moment of decision. When you finally say, enough, when you understand that you can no longer exist torn between desire and fear, that's when the universe begins to conspire in your favor. And rest assured, it moves. For decision represents the most powerful instruction one can utter. It's the moment when consciousness, body, and soul converge in a singular direction. And when that happens, no earthly power is capable of obstructing the inevitable. Eventually, when I realized that what was truly holding back my progress wasn't a lack of effort, nor a scarcity of opportunities, but rather the mental framework that shackled me, an epiphany arose within me. I had spent a considerable portion of my life believing in the need to work incessantly, to strive with increasing fervor, but the outcomes remained unchanged. It was like paddling against the current, expending energy but making no headway. It was then that I understood that the underlying psyche, that immense hidden domain governing practically all our choices, was working against me, perpetuating patterns I hadn't even conceived of. It's crucial to grasp that the subconscious mind functions like fertile ground where all seeds, beneficial or harmful, germinate. It doesn't differentiate fact from fantasy, right from wrong. It simply absorbs what is repeated with feeling and certainty. And that's precisely what kept me trapped in scarcity for such a long time. I was raised hearing that wealth was limited, that livelihood required hard work, that only the fortunate achieved opulence. These assertions, echoed for years, transformed into tacit precepts that my psyche accepted without hesitation. Upon internalizing this truth, I realized the need for a deep cleanse. Imagine going through decades with a directive stating, "You are not allowed, you are not worthy, this is not for you." These statements transform into behaviors. They shape your attitudes, your choices, and even the type of people you attract. Consequently, it's not enough to verbalize the desire to transform your life. It's essential to restructure the algorithm operating in the background. This is precisely what I did. I began to monitor my thoughts, much like a researcher analyzing an experiment. I noticed that every time I uttered, "I can't afford that," or "this is too expensive," I was reinforcing the same paradigm of deprivation. And the universe, complacently, returned to me precisely what I declared: greater lack. The initial step to reshaping the mind is awareness. You cannot change what you don't identify. For that reason, I started recording everything I said to myself regarding finances, success, and contentment. It was painful to realize how much I was harming myself with standardized phrases, but at the same time, it was liberating. The next step was to replace each restrictive idea with a renewed assertion, something that mirrored what I truly wished to believe. At first, it sounded untrue. I felt strange declaring, "I am wealthy," while my bank balance revealed the opposite. However, the more I reiterated it, the more genuine it became. And here lies the core: repetition is the tool that embeds the new paradigm. Just as a path is worn into the ground when someone repeatedly walks the same route, the mind forges new neural connections with each emotional reiteration. And when emotion is present, assimilation intensifies. Consequently, I not only uttered my new beliefs, I experienced them. I closed my eyes and visualized myself living that reality. I felt the texture of the dollar bills in my palms, heard the creak of my new office doors opening, saw people addressing me by name and expressing gratitude for my work. Everything was vibrant, real. The subconscious mind doesn't grasp someday, or perhaps. It understands only the present moment. For that reason, whenever you articulate, "I will be wealthy," it interprets it as something distant, unattainable. However, when you declare, "I am prosperous, I am powerful, I am victorious," you are sowing in the present tense, and it is in the present that materialization begins. Initially, my psyche resisted. The old programming tried to drag me back. I would hear that inner voice saying, "Robert, you're deluding yourself, this isn't real." But I learned to silence that voice and replace it with a more powerful alternative. The journey of reconfiguration demands persistence. It's not enough to do this once a week, or only when inspiration strikes. The mind changes through continuous repetition until the new idea becomes automated. And when that happens, you no longer have to fight to believe, you simply believe. I began to notice small changes, people offering help, opportunities arising unexpectedly, concepts that once seemed inaccessible beginning to materialize. It wasn't by chance, it was a reflection of my renewed psychic alignment. There's a notion I like to call inner proof. It's the point where something within you changes before the external environment does. You begin to feel different, to act differently, and the universe responds. It's like tuning a radio station. If you want to enjoy classical music, it's useless to stay on a rock radio band. The same phenomenon occurs with consciousness. You need to calibrate your internal frequency to the type of existence you long to inhabit. I carried this out through a simple daily routine. Each dawn, before starting my activities, I would declare my aspirations aloud and visualize myself as having already fully achieved them. And before night's rest, I would repeat the procedure. I knew that the limbo between wakefulness and sleep is the moment of greatest receptivity for the subconscious mind. In just a few weeks, I began to notice subtle changes, a sense of flow, greater security, less fear. This was the evidence that my subconscious was being readjusted. You might not perceive it at first, but every new idea is like a seed. If you water it consistently, it will germinate. I didn't know how or when, but I was convinced that something was unfolding. And it did. What once seemed intangible began to materialize. Clients appeared, financial resources began to flow, and my existence took such a significant turn that even to this day, recalling these facts moves me. Reconditioning the mind is, first and foremost, an act of bravery. For it implies abandoning old convictions, renouncing the persona that kept you safe, albeit unhappily. It's about accepting that you are not what you were assigned to be. It's allowing yourself to become your most prosperous, resourceful, and secure self. The transformation begins imperceptibly, but the tangible soon aligns. When it happens, you grasp what I grasped. It's not the environment that changes, it's you who modifies internally, and reality merely mirrors this new energy. Feelings are the true driving force behind all creation. It took me time to understand this. For a long time, I thought that simply uttering positive affirmations or creating solid plans would be enough to guide my life. However, even with all the dedication and knowledge I accumulated, things didn't progress. It was then that I realized the obstacle wasn't in what I said, but rather in what I felt. Emotion is the language your subconscious understands. And while reason expresses itself in terms, the subconscious reacts to the frequency of what you experience. Consider the following: you can assert 1,000 times that you are victorious, but if deep down you feel fear, uncertainty, or lack, the communication you truly emit is the opposite. The cosmos doesn't respond to what you verbalize wishing for, but to what you feel you are. This is where most people go wrong. They try to alter their minds, but remain tied to the same emotion. They crave abundance, but feel guilt when they think about money. They long for love, but fear being rejected. They yearn for autonomy, but carry the burden of insecurity. And the vibration you hold is what shapes your surrounding reality. I understood this painfully, at a time when everything seemed to be falling apart. I worked very hard, studied personal development, made affirmations, but the results were slow to materialize. Until one day, completely exhausted, I sat in quiet stillness and asked, what do I truly feel about myself? The answer was instantaneous: Dishonor. Dishonor for having failed, dishonor for not being the person I thought I could be. And it was there that I understood why nothing was prospering. I was trying to build wealth on a foundation of ignominy. And that is impossible. Feeling is the link between the hidden world and the material one. If you want to change what you see, you must change what you experience. I started diligently observing my emotions. Every time a thought of fear appeared, I didn't try to push it away. I inhaled deeply, acknowledged it, and exchanged it for a state of gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most powerful frequencies there is, for it transmutes any scenario at the precise moment it is perceived. You cannot be grateful and, simultaneously, feel lack. The mind cannot maintain two antagonistic vibrations at the same time. Daily, I practiced a modest but transformative exercise. Before getting out of bed, I closed my eyes and felt gratitude. I didn't focus on anything particular, I just felt. It was as if I was saying to the cosmos, I trust you. And the curious thing is that, the more I connected with that emotion, the more scenarios emerged to support that feeling. It seemed like life was whispering to me, keep feeling this way, and I will keep showing you more reasons to be grateful. This is what I call the vibrational cycle of wholeness. You start by feeling, and the universe begins to respond. It's no coincidence that the most successful people speak about passion for what they do. Feeling creates a resonant field that attracts similar circumstances. I began to employ this force intentionally. When reading my goals, I didn't just repeat them automatically. I closed my eyes and envisioned that everything had already come to pass. I experienced the relief of seeing my obligations paid off, the pride of being able to help others, the happiness of existing in abundance. And, for a few moments, this emotion was genuine. Sometimes, I cried, other times, I laughed, but I always felt it. And that's how I deciphered the expression of the cosmos. Emotion is frequency, and frequency is genesis. There is something intriguing in scientific findings about this. Recent inquiries indicate that the human heart radiates an electromagnetic field up to 60 times more powerful than that of the brain. This means that your feelings literally impact your immediate environment. When feeling fear, the field constricts. When feeling love, it expands. And this expansion is what connects you to appropriate occasions, concepts, and individuals. That's how, even in phases of deprivation, I started attracting situations that seemed improbable, invitations, associations, opportunities that appeared out of nowhere. But nothing emerged from a vacuum, it came from the vibration I was emanating. Feeling also determines your response to challenges. When something fails, you have two options: resonate in fear or resonate in belief. I learned that belief is not the absence of fear, but the resolve to feel secure despite it. When things seemed to spiral out of control, I reiterated to myself, everything happens in my favor, even if I don't yet understand how. This simple phrase completely altered my vitality. What used to paralyze me now motivated me. For I ceased to be a hostage to circumstances and became their conscious architect. Over time, I noticed that emotion is not something you have, but something you generate. It can be cultivated like a muscle. As I began training my mind to feel gratitude, love, and fervor daily, my body began to react. My attitude changed, my vocal tone altered, my countenance transformed. And the world, like a mirror, began to reflect this new self. People started treating me differently, new opportunities arose, and I realized that everything I was looking for externally had always resided within me. It's unfeasible to build abundance while feeling lack. It's impractical to attract love while experiencing repulsion. And it's impossible to live in peace while resonating with guilt. Your feelings are the most potent magnet there is. When you choose to recalibrate your emotional field, the cosmos adjusts. I learned that the secret is not to combat what you experience, but rather to transmute the sensation. If there is fear, transform it into courage. If there is uncertainty, transmute it into belief. If there is hurt, transform it into gratitude. This soulful metamorphosis is what alters the course of life. I recall a night when everything seemed to be over. I had no money to pay my debts, I didn't know what to do. I sat on the floor of my humble home, closed my eyes, and began to give thanks for everything I still had, for being alive, for being able to breathe, for harboring hope. It was one of the purest moments of my life. And that same week, an unforeseen opportunity arose, and everything began to progress. Not because something mystical occurred, but because the vibration changed. And it's always this way. Emotion is the trigger of reality. By learning to use it, the impossible ceases to exist. I used to believe that time was my adversary. I woke up in a hurry, ate lunch quickly, went to bed feeling that the day had slipped through my fingers. And yet, it seemed like I never made progress. Time flowed, but my life didn't transform. Until the day I realized that the obstacle wasn't time, but the way I connected with it. I was taught to believe that the busier I was, the more effective I would be. That being exhausted was proof of merit. But that is one of the biggest traps of the contemporary mind. Being busy doesn't mean you're progressing. How many individuals do you know who live constantly rushing, but remain stagnant? I was one of them. The epiphany occurred during a meal with my mentor, Earl Nightingale. Disillusioned, I asked, Earl, how do you manage to accomplish so much within the same time frame that all of us possess? What's your secret to time management? He looked at me, serene, and replied, Bob, you don't manage time. You manage actions. That hit me like a lightning bolt. Time is impartial. It passes the same way for everyone, wealthy or poor, triumphant or lost. What differs is what you do within it. Time doesn't bend, doesn't stretch, doesn't multiply. But your choices do. I noticed that I was living reactively, like a firefighter putting out fires, always busy, but rarely productive. I answered emails, solved minor issues, allowed myself to be sidetracked by emergencies that, in reality, lacked relevance. It was incessant agitation that made me feel hardworking, but led me nowhere. It was then that I decided to reverse the situation. Instead of starting the day trying to face what the world imposed on me, I began it by defining what was crucial for me. And the difference was dramatic. I stopped chasing time and started directing my vitality. Every choice is like a seed sown in the field of time. If you sow distraction, you reap regret. If you sow purpose, you reap advancement. And the intriguing thing is that, the more deliberate I became, the more time seemed to expand. I had the perception that the days were longer, when in reality I simply stopped squandering them. A large part of humanity doesn't face a lack of time, but rather a lack of concentration. They dedicate their daily hours to what is urgent, instead of what is crucial. They answer messages, check alerts, immerse themselves in tasks that appear to be indispensable, but which, in reality, generate no value. Studies conducted by the University of California reveal that, after a break, an individual takes on average 23 minutes to reassume the same degree of focus. Now, reflect on how many times you are interrupted throughout your day: messages, social media, noises, small distractions. Each one of them subtracts a portion of your vitality. This is why countless people feel exhausted, even without having accomplished anything truly constructive. They remain constantly fragmented, their minds scattered between the past, the future, and their mobile device screens. I experienced this routine for several years until I understood that productivity isn't about quantity, it's entirely about quality. I began to employ a method I called daily purpose. Each morning, I would list the 3 things that would genuinely make a difference during that period. Not 10, not 20, just 3. And I committed to executing those 3 before any other task. It was remarkable how this altered the outcomes. Time didn't change, but the direction of my attention certainly did. And where attention goes, energy flows. I began to witness genuine progress, as I finally stopped confusing motion with effective advancement. It's easy to be busy, it's challenging to be focused. Another fundamental transformation was realizing that saying no is an act of self-love. For a long time, I agreed to everything: requests, commitments, favors, even knowing it pulled me away from what was truly significant. The fear of disappointing others led me to betray myself. However, every time you accept something unimportant, you are denying what truly matters. It was when I started practicing the power of no that time began to work in my favor. I learned to guard my concentration as if it were a treasure, for it is, in fact, the most precious resource one possesses. I recall a phase when I was engaged in 3 distinct occupations. I slept minimally, ate poorly, and assumed this was the cost of success. However, the only thing I gained from such immense effort was exhaustion. It was only when I began to set aside 15 minutes daily, exclusively, to envision my future, that everything started to change. 15 minutes that I labeled sacred periods. Fatigue or responsibilities didn't matter, those 15 minutes were inalienable. I used them to review goals, sketch concepts, and visualize the future in detail. At first, it seemed minuscule, but over the course of a few months, these moments transformed into tangible results. Time is an immaterial currency, and how you spend it reveals the value you place on yourself. By dedicating hours to activities that do not bring you closer to your purpose, you signal to the universe, my existence is not a priority. And the cosmos responds accordingly. It was when I started treating my time with reverence that life began to repay me. I stopped squandering my hours on fruitless conversations, vain distractions, and unproductive worries. Instead, I dedicated time to learning, progressing, and acting with intentionality. And here is a truth that few grasp: you will never find time for the crucial matters. It is imperative to create it. Time does not materialize on its own, you are the one who shapes it. With every refusal you utter to what is dispensable, you create space for what truly builds. I learned to value moments of silence, instances of quietude, for it is in them that the transformative insights blossom. While the world rushes, those who choose to pause and reflect generate. Today, looking back, I realize the scarcity was never of time. It was of direction. It was of determination. When you understand this, you stop blaming the clock and start taking the reins. Time is identical for everyone. What differs is what you do with it. And when you decide that every moment will be a seed for something grand, time ceases to be an antagonist and becomes your most loyal ally. There comes a point when you need to introspect and ask, am I merely absorbing inspiration, or am I, in fact, aligning with this new version of myself? Because aspiring to change is admirable, but openly committing to it, that removes internal obstacles. It is for this reason that if you feel this force pulsing within you, take this opportunity to register now and express your appreciation. It is not a meaningless gesture, but a psychological indicator. It is you affirming, I am committed. Every concrete action that corroborates your purpose, however insignificant it may seem, strengthens a renewed identity. And do not underestimate this, for cognition operates through associations. By taking a stand, even with a simple tap, you are conditioning your mind to consent to your future. But let's delve deeper. How many times have you promised you would change, only to revert to the pre-existing pattern? You woke up motivated on a Monday and, by Tuesday, found yourself paralyzed by fear, uncertainty, or that almost imperceptible murmur of your old self saying, later. How many times have you started a project with fervor and subsequently felt the motivation dissipate? This is exactly how the psyche works when it doesn't find external engagement. The mind seeks familiar territory. It prefers the security of stagnation over the discomfort of development. People don't fail due to a lack of aspirations, they fail because they try to transform in secret, protected, hidden, without establishing the emotional accountability to sustain the process. I recall a moment at the outset of my journey, when I was sharing these precepts even before I felt qualified in material terms. Some observed and wondered, who is he to speak about success? And I understand. However, I knew that if I waited for perfection to teach, I would never take the first step. It was a public commitment, an unpretentious action, that launched me into the endeavor. I was proclaiming to myself and to the universe, I walk this path, with trembling hands if necessary, but I proceed. And every time I spoke with someone about goals, I solidified my own. Every time I guided someone to act, I compelled myself to act once more. Engagement built me, step by step, until the world began to discern what I had already perceived before. And it is here that many stagnate. Perhaps you identify fear of judgment from others, fear of failing under the scrutiny of third parties. How many opportunities have slipped away because you pondered, what if I fail? How many times have you sabotaged yourself trying to appear cautious, when in reality you were afraid to expose yourself? Science calls this cognitive self-preservation bias. The brain avoids scenarios where there is emotional danger, even if it compromises your future. Most people prefer to fail in secret than to prosper under the gaze of others. But the cost of this is living confined in the expectation of an ideal moment that never materializes. A public commitment is not meant to prove anything to others, it is meant to prove to yourself that you are taking your life seriously. By proclaiming an intention to the world, you generate emotional energy. You instigate movement. And movement attracts circumstances. Have you ever noticed that when you genuinely decide to start something and communicate it, opportunities begin to emerge? Individuals appear, ideas blossom, resources surface. It's not coincidence. It's vibratory and psychic harmonization. The universe responds to clarity and courage, never to indecision. Therefore, here is something impactful that I want you to perform in the coming days as a particular challenge. Select one goal, just one, and announce it to someone you trust. And do not declare it with hesitation, but with firmness. Mention what you will do and within what time frame. It can be something simple. Dedicate yourself to reading daily for 10 minutes, save a certain amount weekly, learn a skill, exercise every day. The important thing is not the magnitude, it is the dedication. You will notice that, from the moment you verbalize it, something inside you rearranges. Your vitality shifts. You do not wish to fail yourself, and this strengthens your self-discipline. And remember, your support and approval here are not for my benefit, but for your own. It is you transmitting a silent communication to your core, I adopt choices consistent with my advancement. You are not merely watching audio-visual content, you are assuming governance over what is being forged within you. And every time you act toward the desired future, even through small actions, the previous version loses influence, and the new one gains vitality. Because, ultimately, success does not begin at the outcome, it begins with action. With a symbolic act. With, I decide right now. And when you decide in this way, with purpose and execution combined, reality has no alternative. It reacts. Invariably. When witnessing the remarkable success of individuals, many readily seek external justifications. That person was just lucky, they made the right connections, they had opportunities that were denied to me. It's curious, because this line of reasoning offers more comfort to the mind than it elucidates reality. The undeniable truth is that the universe has never been complacent with those who aspire to greatness. And those who truly triumph first achieve victory internally. When I refer to figures like Oprah, I am not limited to her celebrity, I speak of what happens when someone chooses to be the determining factor, and not merely the outcome of their own journey. She came from an environment where, statistically, the world expected her failure. However, internally, there was a silent conviction: I did not come to this world to live under limitations. There was no security, no guarantees, no path was previously trodden. There was, yes, a resolution. And that resolution, day after day, gained robustness, to the point of becoming undeniable. What many do not discern is that the genesis of transformation does not reside in the goal itself, but in the inner alignment with it. Oprah didn't wait until she had everything to embark on her journey. She didn't rely on external validation. She developed a mental and emotional framework even before any material achievement. It's the same path I walked when I started sharing principles that reshaped my own existence, at a time when it was still vastly different from what it would become. For when you express the truth of your soul, even if the world around you can't yet see what you envision, reality bends in your favor. And here lies a point that might deeply resonate with you. While most seek external references, true creators find them within. How many times have you said to yourself, only when my situation improves, then I'll be able to? When I have more time, more financial resources, more recognition, greater support. But what if all of that only comes asterisk after asterisk, never before? How many people do you know who perished waiting for permission to act? How many desires were buried because someone believed they first needed to become worthy to begin? Life doesn't hand you a finished project, it responds to your stance. I vividly recall the first occasion I spoke with full conviction about prosperity and universal principles to a group. My financial situation at the time didn't mirror the magnitude of the vision I carried. And I felt that unease, that voice whispering, "Who are you to address such a subject?" But, simultaneously, another voice, more deeply rooted, urged me on, "Continue. Because you are not describing who you are. You are describing who you have decided to become." And every individual who applied the teachings and returned reporting that life was changing, ratified this truth within me. It was incontrovertible proof that when there is internal alignment, the external universe adjusts. That's why it's so impactful to observe examples of people who broke established patterns. Not for idolization, but to remind you of the same spark that lives within you. I ask, have you truly allowed yourself to believe that you can be an exception to the statistics? That your past doesn't dictate your future? Or are you still captive to the logic of survival, waiting for tangible foundations to believe in something that originated in the realm of the intangible? Science already attests that our perception shapes our behavior, our emotions mold our choices, and our choices shape our reality. It's not possible to experience scarcity and attract abundance. It's not possible to see yourself in smallness and receive greatness. And when someone like Oprah, or anyone who started from nothing and built an empire both internal and external, transforms, she proves that the law operates. She demonstrated that it wasn't about fortune, but about vibration, emotional discipline, and clarity of purpose. Now, reflect on what you have overlooked within yourself. What talent, what aspiration, what idea have you repressed because you don't want to sound presumptuous, for fear of criticism, or because you believe the right time hasn't arrived? How many times have you self-censored before even making a move? The world doesn't need more individuals waiting to feel prepared. It longs for people willing to rise before the structure is complete, exactly as the great names in history did. The primary question isn't whether you aim to achieve something extraordinary. The question is, are you willing to transform into the person who attracts the extraordinary? Everything begins at that point. And when you do, something magical manifests. The world begins to see what you first envisioned within yourself. And that's how desires cease to be mere mental images and transform into concrete facts in reality. There are stories that shine brightly and then vanish with the same speed they captivated the world, serving as a warning that success devoid of an internal structure is like building a castle on quicksand. Consider the example of MC Hammer. At his peak, he accumulated more than $30 million. A colossal residence, an immense team, lavish spending. But here's the detail many overlook: he built his fortune before cultivating identity, self-discipline, and proportional awareness. And when the money arrived faster than his inner metamorphosis, the outcome was inevitable. In the year 1996, he declared bankruptcy. Not due to a lack of aptitude, but due to the lack of a mental alignment capable of sustaining what he had achieved. Is it harsh? Yes. But it's the pure truth. And I'm not telling this to pass judgment, but to incite an awakening. For perhaps you imagine, if I received more income, my life would change. How many times has that premise ever crossed your mind? However, studies indicate that 70% of people who suddenly obtain large sums of money, such as lottery prizes, lose everything in a few years. It's not about money. It's about identity, habits, self-concept. The mind invariably pulls you back to the sphere it identifies as conventional. If you don't elevate yourself internally, the exterior crumbles. It's a principle based not only on what I teach, but on human behavior, psychology, and neuroscience. Have you noticed that, at times, life grants you small victories, and then seems to reverse everything? Some attribute this to misfortune. I affirm that it's a test. Life asks you, you prepared to maintain this? Has your inner universe transformed, or just your excitement? How many times have you started a venture, a diet, a new habit and then returned to square one? It's not weakness, it's a mental mechanism that seeks to preserve the old self. And there is no greater wealth than identifying this cycle, because then you can finally break it. I experienced something analogous on a different scale. When I started generating income with my cleaning company, everything was new. I had never envisioned financial volumes of that proportion. And do you know what happened? In the beginning, I even self-sabotaged myself on several occasions. I spent without planning, allowed myself to be influenced by emotional impulses, watched the capital grow and felt a mix of joy and fear. Fear of losing it. Fear of not being able to keep it. Until one day, I sat down, alone, and wrote, if I don't change who I am, I will lose what I've achieved. That moment shocked me deeply. It was a silent plea to take command of my own mind before the external world imposed this lesson on me in an even more painful way. It's not a difficult task to accumulate money. The challenge lies in sustaining a mindset capable of multiplying and safeguarding it. Genuine bankruptcy never starts in the bank account, it originates in thought. And true opulence follows the same pattern. For this reason, you need to observe yourself with humility and courage. Currently, perhaps your obstacles are paying obligations, mastering impulses, maintaining focus. For others, it might be managing expansion, rapid progress. In all circumstances, the maxim is identical: without an internal change, any external triumph is transient. I propose that you execute a simple, yet profound exercise in the coming days. Whenever you receive money, whether in a modest or substantial amount, ask yourself 3 questions. Do I know precisely where it's going? Am I taking care of it responsibly, or am I trying to fill an emotional void through consumption? Would the person I aspire to become use this money in the same way? You will be astonished by what you uncover. This practice isn't about financial control, it's about emotional control. Lasting wealth is the result of consistent deliberations, not sporadic peaks. MC Hammer's story isn't a critique, it's a mirror. Talent without discernment results in financial misfortune. Aspiration without discipline turns into regret. Money without the right mindset becomes a burden. Don't just aim to ascend, aim to become someone capable of staying at the top. Because excessively rapid growth without a foundation can be more painful than never prospering at all. And you aren't here to burst forth and disappear. You are here to build, solidify, and multiply. And all of this begins internally, always internally. Fear, hesitation, insecurity, these forces don't vanish when you choose to evolve. On the contrary, they intensify. They whisper, what if you fail? What if they ridicule you? What if you lose everything? Most people only move forward when they perceive confidence, when the outlook seems safe, when their spirit is calm. But confidence doesn't precede action, it emerges asterisk after asterisk it. Moving forward is what suggests bravery. Have you realized this? That moment when you felt fear, but proceeded, and in the end reflected, if I had known how it would be, I would have acted sooner. Exactly. Fear deceived you. And it will persist in this trickery until you decide to disobey it. I've lived this experience countless times, I've lost count. When I left the Navy, many considered that I had gone mad. In renouncing the stability of a conventional path to dedicate myself to the study of the mind, abundance, and the meaning of life, no one applauded me. There was no grand reception, just quietness, uncertainty, criticism. And within me, a whirlwind. However, something higher manifested, the realization that if I waited to be prepared, my entire existence would drain away, and I would never move forward. Have you ever experienced that feeling? That feeling that something bigger is calling you, yet fear tries to keep you exactly where you are. There comes a point in your journey when you must choose, heed the voice that seeks to protect you, or listen to the one that pushes you to grow. Fear isn't your enemy, it simply highlights the boundaries of your current self. Without fear, there's no progress, only stagnation. Science has already shown, when you face something that makes you uncomfortable, and act despite it, your brain forges new connections, new emotional responses, new skills. This is known as neuroplasticity. I call it liberation. Once, early on, I had the opportunity to speak to a small audience. For many, this might sound insignificant. For me, it felt as if I was about to perform on a global stage. My heart pounded so intensely I could feel the blood rushing through my veins. A part of me longed to retreat. And I admit, for a moment, I almost fabricated an excuse. But I paused, took a deep breath, and told myself, if you back down now, this fearful aspect will dictate the entire trajectory of your life. So, I moved forward. And on that day, even with my legs shaking, I unveiled a side of myself that had never before existed. If I had given in to that fear, perhaps you wouldn't be listening to me right now. How many opportunities have you let slip away by waiting to feel ready? How many conversations have you put off? How many projects have you shelved? How many aspirations have you kept hidden because you believed you needed to conquer fear before taking action? Life doesn't reward those who wait. It rewards those who take action. Fear doesn't dissipate with time, it dissolves with progress. Every single time you advance despite it, you send a powerful message to your subconscious, I am not a prisoner of this sensation. And that changes everything. I want you to do something simple, yet profoundly impactful. Grab something to write with and jot down right now, what decision are you putting off because of fear? It could be starting something, completing something, taking on a new responsibility, making a request, or simply being bold. Choose one. Now, take a small step in that direction within the next **24 hours. It doesn't have to be monumental, just tangible. For courage doesn't emerge from grand achievements, it's cultivated through small, consistent actions until fear loses its grip. Bear in mind, fear will always try to safeguard you, even from what is meant for you. So, when it emerges, don't ask, how do I make it vanish? Instead, inquire, what is it pointing toward? Because where there is fear, there is potential for growth. And where there is growth, there is vitality. And when you choose to press on, even with apprehension, the universe responds. It always responds. Not because you already possess strength, but because you commit to action and, through that action, you become strong. The practice of visualization isn't about vague imaginings. It's not fantasizing, hoping that something will magically appear in your path without effort. Visualization is an act of deliberate creation. It's you shaping reality, first and foremost, in the only space where all manifestation begins, inside your mind. Most people perceive visualization as something esoteric, mysterious, almost childish. Yet, the brain doesn't distinguish between what you visually perceive and what you vividly imagine with deep focus and emotion. Neuroscience confirms this. Studies with high-performance athletes show that those who mentally rehearse activate the same brain regions as during physical training, and enhance their performance purely through the power of visualization. If the body responds to what the mind believes, why wouldn't your entire life follow suit? In my early days, I lived in a humble room, with more debts than actual cash, yet I would close my eyes and picture myself speaking to thousands of people, traveling across the globe, impacting lives, creating work that would endure for generations. I saw myself with clarity, with abundance, with a profound sense of purpose. I could feel what it was like to move on a brightly lit stage. I heard the voices, I saw the faces, I sensed the energy. Then I'd open my eyes and be cleaning the floor of an office. The difference? After vividly visualizing, that floor no longer represented my ultimate destiny, but simply a step along the path. Visualization transformed my inner state, and when your state changes, your behavior shifts. And when your behavior shifts, reality, inevitably, follows suit. The majority of people fantasize about what they dread, not what they aspire to. They wake up pondering all that could go wrong, dwelling on past afflictions, replaying disappointments, and mentally creating the future they most desperately wish to avoid. Unknowingly, they treat their fears as if they were prophecies. Your brain doesn't question whether what you imagine is good or bad, it simply absorbs it as an emotional truth. If you rehearse the scenario of failure daily, how can you ever expect to achieve success? You need to train your mind to anticipate victories, not to rehash failures. Visualize not as a means of escape, but as a rigorous form of training. For life grants you that for which you emotionally prepare. There were mornings when I'd wake up utterly exhausted, seeing absolutely no signs of progress. And on those days, the practice of visualization became even more vital. I'd sit down, close my eyes, and take deep breaths. I'd reaffirm what I desired, feel the precursor of joy, mentally walk through the life I was certain was meant for me. One memorable occasion, I found myself completely devoid of funds, anxious about how I would settle my debts. I went into a public restroom, pulled my vision card from my pocket, and right there, I pictured everything as if it were already resolved. I experienced a sense of calm even before it manifested. I felt abundant before seeing a single $dollar. And I cried, because in that instant I realized I had already transformed internally, and no one could ever take that away from me. Have you noticed that during challenging times, your mind tries to pull you back into old patterns? It craves for you to voice thoughts like, "It's not possible, I can't do it, this isn't for me." It is precisely on those days that you must rise up and envision yourself as the person who has already achieved their aspirations. Don't wait for reality to align before you believe, reality aligns because you believe. This isn't irrational conviction, it's an effective and cognitive science. You think, feel, act, and attract based on the state you inhabit. Stop merely visiting your future. Begin to live in it. Adopt a daily practice. Every day, for *5** minutes, sit in quiet stillness. Close your eyes. Envision your goals as already achieved. Not as a mere hypothesis, but as a living reality. Observe every detail, where you live, how you dress, who you interact with, what you feel upon waking, the choices you make, how you carry yourself. Observe, feel, live. The more consistently you do this, the more your subconscious will come to accept it as something palpable. And when the mind truly assimilates, the body follows suit, actions naturally unfold, opportunities emerge, and pathways open up. And when that old voice inevitably resurfaces, whispering, "This is just delusion," simply smile. Because everything that exists today, someone first imagined. The mind that creates is far more potent than the world that resists. When you project yourself into the future with clarity and emotion, you're not merely indulging in fanciful dreams, you are pre-constructing that which, inevitably, will manifest in its own perfect time. Do you realize how everything truly begins within? How every single step forward, every mental landscape, every silent transformation deep inside you constructs an entirely different world outside? Keep nurturing this vision. Continue choosing to embody the version of yourself that already lives this reality, because every time you do, you bring the undeniable closer. And remember, you're not just doing this for yourself. There's someone in your life who perhaps has never been told that they possess greater potential, that they were born for something far grander, and who only needs a spark like this to be ignited. So, please share this audio or video content with that person. It could be the encouragement they've been waiting for years. Thank you for being here, for embarking on this journey with me. I look forward to seeing you in the next recording. We still have so much more to create together.